That's pretty groovy.
Yeah.
Is this the same as last week?
No, this is a new one. I'm keeping the fancy Monday show one for Mondays. The upbeat one, because it's a bit crazy. It's a bit too crazy for an interview, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, welcome to the Camera Life podcast. It is, what is it? Is it like the 20th of February? Something crazy?
20th.
January felt like the longest month in existence, and February is already 20 days through. This is episode 53 of the Camera Life podcast, proudly brought to you by Lucky Straps out of Bendigo, Victoria, makers of fine handmade leather camera straps. If you want yourself a strap, check out the links. Episode 53. Oh my gosh.
We're flying through it.
We are flying. Now, don't forget, for those of you watching and listening along, we now run 2 weekly podcasts. We have our interview podcast every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time at the moment. And then we also have the Random Photography Show, which is very, very random. And that's on a Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time.
And now, thanks to editor Seb, we've got some little bite-sized morsels coming out on the channel of little clips and things that we're getting out of the shows. Editor Seb trawls through the hours of yapping that we do and finds the couple of good bits and puts them out. So
he does.
Plenty of content coming to you.
Plenty. But enough about that. Oh, also, don't forget that we are on the audio podcast channels. You can watch our back catalogue. You can watch Editor Seb's clips on the Camera Life podcast YouTube channel. God, get it right eventually. It's only been 53 episodes. And like and subscribe, tickle the bell so you get all the notifications. But we are joined today by landscape photographer, award-winning landscape photographer, Alex Frayne. Alex, welcome to the Camera Life podcast.
Greg, it's a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. Now, Alex, you've been a photographer for quite some time, and we want to go through your story and learn a little bit about your journey, because I think there's a lot of inspiration for people that are new to the craft or people that are looking for a change in direction. A lot of inspiration from hearing from people as old as yourself.
Thanks.
Could you just give us a little rundown of who you are and what you currently do in the world of photography?
Adelaide based, born in England, actually. My parents were studying in London when I came along. And so first couple of years were spent in England, and again when I was 5 or 6 years old back there. So I had a passport which I am proud to say I've never actually used. I've been to England, but I've never had to use the passport. I've always gone on an Australian passport, and I consider myself Australian, and my parents are Aussie, and I live and have lived in Adelaide since I was a kid. So it was at a pretty young age that my mother bought me an 8mm movie camera. Mm-hmm. So we're talking mid-80s, and this was the era where 8mm was still a thing. Yeah. Occasionally, you'd find friends, kids at school with wealthy parents who may have got a VHS camcorder, or before that, a UMAT video machine. But 8mm was still going, and you would shoot little canisters of 3 minutes of 8mm film, and then send it off to Rochester, New York, and wait a month, and it would come back developed.
Was that the home of Kodak?
Yeah, that was the birthplace of Kodak, and still remains a Kodak facility in Rochester. You'd send the stuff away in these little orange envelopes, and you'd get them back a month later. It was the wait time, which was excruciating.
So
and in
no
the meantime,
no one in Australia was developing that stuff.
I think there was a lab in Melbourne, but I actually think there was such demand that they would actually send a lot of the material off to America. So the wait was huge, and I think it sort of started me off on the idea that film photography or film movie making, which has carried through to my I use analog now. It dates back to those early days of being basically an analog shooter. I had a little camera that was Sanyo, not Sanyo, Sankyo. you found that there were often companies in Japan making cameras that had names that were one letter different to the well-known brand.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a Sankyo 8mm film camera, mute, of course. You could record sound with 8mm, little microphone plugged into the side of the movie camera, but I never did that, and just shot mute and started making little short films down at our property near Strathalbyn, which is in the Mallee, and involving my family and myself and my friends, and they were sort of the typical kind of plot of someone gets shot, and there's a gun, and one of the neighbors had lent us a gun, and Alex gets shot, or Alex rides a horse and shoots someone dead. His mum shoots him. There were 100 different variations on a theme, and the plots were very basic. But it did get me into the idea of filmmaking, which is my first career post school. Having done 8mm, I went to Flinders Uni and did a BA, and part of that BA involved, what screen studies, as it was, and that was partly theoretical and partly practical. And
can I just jump in there for a sec, Alex? Going back to the 8mm, so you could only shoot 3 minutes total worth of clips. How did you find? I know it was some time ago, but how did you find those limitations? Because often nowadays we don't have those sorts of limitations, like digital cameras, especially, obviously. They now say that you can have unlimited recording time in 4K, 6K, provided you've got an external monitor with enough storage, all that sort of thing. How do you think those limitations influenced your art style?
I think they were pivotal and have carried through those lessons today, when instead of shooting 3 minutes on a roll, I'm shooting 12 frames on a roll of 120 film. And so, there's a thought that has to go into the process of framing and setting things up, and you become sort of more of a director, I think, when you're placed under those limitations, because you have to really think things through. So with your 3 minute 8mm cassette, you'd be thinking of the plot and how many shots you can do of mum holding a gun. You can't just do mum holding a gun for hours and hours. You have to get it right. So those sort of slow down things were valuable lessons about forming narratives and framing a character and theme, tone, all the things that I sort of still think about today when I'm shooting film. However, these days, when it comes to shooting film, I don't really have those thought processes. If I'm into something, I don't care that there's 12 shots on a roll. I'll shoot 20 rolls if I have to get what I want. So it's not an economics argument now. Perhaps it was back then, because each roll of Kodak film was $20. So you have to think economically. And one of the arguments given by people these days about shooting film is that it slows you down and makes you think more about everything, which is true. But it's for me, it's beyond that. I don't care about those limitations. I'll work through them in order to get exactly what I'm after. Yeah,
but you've got decades of experience under your belt. So if someone was new from digital to film, I think they'd find that overwhelming. And even, Justin, you've said in the past that if you had learnt on film in the early days, and worked on, well, you tell the story. It's your story, Justin.
I don't know this for sure, but like when I picked up photography later in life as a hobby, and then a job, a career and a business, and the instant gratification of digital is what spurred me on to learn like what I think was fairly quickly. And I just don't know if I would have pushed through that hump with film. I don't know if I would have had the drive to wait and then try and take notes about what you did. I didn't take notes or anything like that, because I could see it on the back of the screen and go, oh, that didn't work, or that did work. Whereas I think you had to be maybe more disciplined and put a bit more time into learning the craft of photography when it was film, because of the slower speed that everything was. I don't know.
When I learned film, it wasn't just the taking of the shots that you had to slow down. You had to be careful in the darkroom. You had to be careful when you were developing your roles. the whole end-to-end process required extra thought. I mean, you get the hang of it eventually, obviously, but mixing chemicals, it's all chemistry. You've got to get it right. So you can't just speed through that to get an instant result. You've got to really take your time and make sure you've shut the curtain so the light's not leaking in. And you
can definitely damage it on the back end as well.
Yeah, or even just loading your spools, like loading your own 35mm canisters, which I used to do in art school.
Yep.
If you got that wrong, and then you went out and thought you got the best shots of your life, and came back only to discover that actually maybe somehow light got in.
Yeah.
It's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it?
I always take a digital camera, especially when traveling. I'll tell you a story that I've told a few times before, but I'll tell it again because it's a good one.
And we love stories.
I'd recently bought a Fuji GW2 6.9 camera, so 6x9 120 film, pretty much the biggest you can go, with medium format before you're into the 5x7s and 10x8s. And I took it out to a place near Barmera, which is on the Murray, and it's an area which is a kind of artificial lake area. They made it a dam basically to attract tourists, and it's beautiful. And it's got these lovely dead trees that died when it became, flooded. And they're beautiful to shoot because you can get up nice and close. They're not that far away from the bank of the lake, so you can spend time getting the right frame. It was the first time I'd ever used a rangefinder camera, and I was very excited. Loaded up the roll of film, drove the 3-hour journey out to Lake Barmera. Got up to my waist in water, so I was right up nice and close to a big old tree, and started shooting the 8 shots that you get when you shoot 6x9. And I was very pleased with myself, and I was sort of printing the images, before even sort of seeing them, kind of thing, in my head. These are some of my best work, I'm thinking. So I'm driving home, and this Fuji camera is sitting on the passenger seat, and I just looked down at it and noticed that it had the lens cap on. And I thought, well, I was actually quite proud of myself. I thought, well, I didn't lose the lens cap, because often I lose lens caps. And I thought, well, good on you for not losing the lens cap. And then about an hour later, I thought, I probably wouldn't have put the lens cap back on. I usually stick the lens cap in my back pocket and, deal with it later when I'm home. And by the second hour of driving back home, I was pretty
that anxiety's got into your brain, hasn't it?
That I hadn't actually taken the lens cap off.
Yeah.
And of course, with a rangefinder camera, you don't know, and it's force of habit that having shot rangefinder cameras, you would know that you would just take the lens cap off. But this was the first time for me, and so by the time I reached home, I was 100% certain that I had shot a dark roll, and that the lens cap was on for each of the shots, and that indeed turned out to be true. I was shooting Fuji Velvia, so it was slide film. I took it to the lab just in case, and of course the next day I got that horrible phone call where they said there's nothing on the roll, just to let you know. And my heart sank. But then the next day I thought, well, I'll just go out there again, and I've learned my lesson. And these are the slings and arrows of shooting on analog film. And next time I will take the digital camera, and I will make sure that the lens cap is off, and I will respect the medium.
Yep. Yeah. Important lesson.
Didn't do that again.
Never did that again. It's a good camera. It's a big thing. It's not. The viewfinder's a bit too dark, I think. If I was to get another 6x7 or 6x9 camera, I'd look at other options. And at the moment, I am looking around for a new camera to take to America. And I'm sort of leaning towards 645 as my new format. But yeah, it's one of those lessons. I went out and reshot the images a week later, and they were perfectly fine. But I did keep thinking that the light was better the first time round. You never can shoot the same image twice, and often when you return to locations, hoping to milk the location or to get more of it, it just isn't the same as the magic of the first time. So yeah.
No, that's fair. That is fair. Should we jump to a couple of quick comments?
Yeah.
while we're
Just
rolling.
Few quick good mornings. Good morning, Rick Nelson up in Brisbane. He said it's early. It's 8 a.m. for you guys up there. No daylight savings. That's okay.
The sun's been up for 7 hours already.
Yeah, that's right. Elena says good morning. And
Morning, Elena.
Digifrog Dave from Tasmania says, morning, Elena and the boys. Where's the beard prop? No beard prop today. Thursdays are our professional show. I don't do silly gags like that on this show. This is when we have guests on. I don't want to,
give them the wrong impression.
That's right. Yeah. Got to make a good impression.
Yep. Alex, you mentioned that you do take a digital camera with you now. What camera are you shooting with when you do shoot digital?
It's just the Nikon D700, which is my sort of workhorse backup camera that has rescued me occasionally, and I love it. It's old and clunky and has a very loud shutter, but I just love the smaller size of the raw files. Means my old Windows 7 laptop doesn't choke, and so I've got all my gear is sort of retro to about 2004 or 5. I've got an Epson 550 scanner, which is very old, D700, Windows 7 running on an 8.
Getting a theme.
Yeah, it's a very naughty kind of setup, and if ever someone needs to transfer their latest Sony A7 III images to my computer, it just doesn't work. It's something it can't read the new RAW files, and it just the blue screen of death comes along pretty quickly. So at some point I'll have to upgrade, but my dad's got a Windows 10 computer which I can't make head nor tail of, but I'm happy with my Windows 7. It's very me.
I think it's a really interesting story to hear, because about your love of retro technology, or maybe your fear of moving into current gen technology, because so many of us, I was on a photo walk last night with the camera club, Melbourne Camera Club in the city.
Yeah.
And so many people were sporting, it was a bit of a mix. Most of them were sporting new cameras and lenses. Yet I still had some questions about, what ISO should I shoot? And it's like, stop investing in glass and camera bodies, go do some basic lessons. What do you think it is that, because we're also, often we get obsessed, especially Justin, we get obsessed with megapixels, latest focus performance, the latest low light performance, the latest, and that's just in cameras. And then glass is another story. And then obviously there's peripherals like computers and monitors, and needing a big BenQ one with a hood over it so you can get the color right, and people are attaching color correction things to their screens. And what do you think it is with you in particular that has allowed you to hold back from that and work within the limitations of previous generation technology?
It gets down to aesthetics and the look that you're after, and for me, having gone through those Super 8 years, and then gone through the years of developing film at the university, just in the dark room, I became accustomed to a look. And I guess also growing up in watching movies from the 70s and 80s and early 90s, it's a look that I appreciate and I'm comfortable with. That's really what it's to do with. And I guess the depth and tonality that you get with film is just something which makes my job easier, because then I can, once I've got the aesthetic, I can then work on all the other stuff, tone, theme, message, story. These kind of things are all I think about now. The tech stuff is really set in stone. I shoot mainly with a Hasselblad 501C, which was one of the late model Hasselblads from the 90s. And, for me, it's the Rolls Royce of image quality, under a good scan, either done by me or the lab. They have a flex tight scanner. You're at the final frontier of quality, so that you don't have to worry anymore about that stuff. You're relaxed about it, and you're going to be just thinking about the sort of more head stuff.
Yeah. I think it's really inspirational to hear, because we're at 53 episodes, and especially in the last couple of months, we've had a lot of people that have been shooting film. And I meet more people when I do things like photo walks and the like that actually shoot film, which is really great to see. And we talked about it last week because we had John Umina, or Umina, from Lumina Labs in Kyneton in Victoria. I don't know if you saw that episode, Alex, but he runs a lab and very passionate medium format film photographer, but also runs this lab as his work life.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing more and more film related stories coming up, which is really great to see.
I think I saw a statistic that the head-on competition, which is one that I enter, 50% of the finalists a year or two ago were originating on film.
That's awesome. Wow.
And so in terms of shooting film around, you live in Adelaide. We've talked last week about labs in Victoria. What's your go-to? Do you have a lab in Victoria? Do you have to send them off? Do you have somewhere that has a shop front you can go to, a brick and mortar store, so to speak? What do you do once you've shot your rolls and you're ready to?
I develop all my stuff myself.
Oh wow! Okay.
Color and black and white. So I shoot more black and white than color, but I have a dark bag where I switch the film out from the camera into a canister. I don't have a dark room. I have a dark bag, and once the film is in the canister, it's bringing in the Kodak syrup and pouring it in, and 6.5 minutes later you've developed, and then you're fixing for 4 minutes, and that's it. It's hung up and it's drying, and it's ready by 2 hours later you're ready to scan. So there's a huge cost saving there. So considering that if you were to take that to a lab in Adelaide, you'd be up for about $40 or $50. So I'm shooting 3 rolls a week, maybe 5 rolls a week. There's a big saving. But more importantly, it's about control. So, when I'm developing black and white film, I can control everything, from the moment I shoot the thing to the moment that I'm developing it, how I develop it, how much I agitate the canister, how much time I give to the development, whether it's 9 minutes or 6. If you're pushing, it's going to be 9. If you're pulling, it's going to be 4 minutes. Each of these steps has a different effect on the look of the film. Obviously, if you're rougher, you can get higher contrast. If you change the temperature up and down, you can get higher contrast. If you overexpose the film and underdevelop the film, you get pretty much infinite latitude. This is you get huge amounts of shadow detail. So I don't do labs. I used to, but that would have been a good 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
With color, there's a 2-step powder that I get from Walkins. That's called Cinestill, which is fairly simple, provided you have everything at 39 degrees. And if you're above 2 degrees or below, your film is gone. So it's a little tougher color. You've got to be really careful to keep that temperature bang on. Yeah. So I scan my own too. I have an Epson 550, but if I'm doing competition scanning or really, high-end scanning, I'll take it to the lab. Black and White Photographics is the name of the lab. They're in Stepney. I've used them for years. They do my printing and they do my high-end scanning on a flex type.
Are you doing anything after scanning it?
Once it's scanned, it goes straight into Photoshop for just resizing. Not a lot of Photoshop required, because you're shooting on film. So what would be the point? Often the scans are really kind of high key, quite bright, because you've got all this latitude with film. So if anything, I'm bringing it back a bit, darkening it, but not much, not a lot. And it's interesting, on Facebook and Instagram, the question I often get is what post-production am I doing? And because people are not familiar with film, some people are not familiar with the film aesthetic, and I just say, well, not much. It's shot on film, so perhaps you're talking about a look that is actually organic, and if you were looking at more film, you would see that it's just natural to look that way. It's not post-produced to look that way.
The other thing is, sorry, go on, Justin.
I was just going to say, what's an example of not much? So, like, obviously, the look is baked into the film, and that's the look that you're going for. But what if you did sort of tweak something just to make it okay? This is now ready for my purpose. What would be an example of a change you would make to a film scan in say Photoshop?
And that depends also on the outcome, well, the delivery platform. So if I'm posting on Instagram, I tend to go darker in the post production. I'll bring it back, and you'll see an increase in contrast, and you'll see shadows slightly disappearing. So that's one outcome. Another outcome is a collector has bought a print at 1 meter wide. I tend to sort of want it to be a little bit brighter because the printing tends to be a bit darker. So you get to know all these things as you go. And I've occasionally collectors say, well, what I saw on the internet when I bought this image is brighter than what you've delivered to me, so I'll redo it for them. So how I post produce depends on the final destination of the image. If it's a website licensing agreement I've done, I can go a bit moodier and darker because the LED screens are so damn good. The best looking images, I think, tend to be the backlit ones.
Yeah. This is actually the perfect question from Rick Nelson that I think you just answered, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Do you change anything in Photoshop for film scan depending on whether you share on Instagram or print? I think you just summed it up perfectly. Yeah. So it's mainly a matter of what's the medium that it's going to be shared in, and a backlit bright phone screen at a small size requires a bit of a different touch to a large format print that's not backlit.
And then book printing is another thing. You've got to be really careful. With book printing, the viewing distance that someone is looking at a book is, it's half a meter. It's a couple of feet, so they will see everything. So one thing I do in Photoshop is I will get rid of dust that's on the neck or on the slide, and occasionally if it's there, I'll say, well, that's just because it's film. But I tend not to have that argument. I don't want to be asked about dust. So I'm grateful that Photoshop has the hill, because that, when you're book printing, you've got to be absolutely on top of your game, because it's it's such a permanent record. And the viewing distance is not even like gallery distance, which is a couple of meters. It's a couple of feet of that.
And it's a different thing to posting it on Instagram versus someone paying for a book of photos. They expect a certain quality. There's a transaction.
And they can really take the time to go over it quite finely.
Whereas Instagram, people look at it for 2.5 seconds on average, and that's about it.
If you're lucky, they give it a little double heart thing, and that's it.
It's a different, it's a different world. The impermanency of images is, I don't love the fact that you go to Barmer and shoot that tree on 6:9 analog medium format, and it ends up being a couple of inches big on a screen on Instagram. So this gets down to why myself and other artists want to go further. So books, gallery showings, physical exhibition, it really is an attempt in part to combat that ephemeral nature of the internet, which we both love. We both love and loathe. It helps us, but who would have thought that you shoot these incredible formats with cameras and you end up with that size, tiny.
Stamp,
But it reminds me of the Bill Leak card. I think it was Bill Leak cartoon of Paul Keating versus John Howard. Paul Keating had the huge big 4 meter by 3 canvas on the wall. And then you've got the cutaway of John Howard. It's sort of his vision is on a postage stamp. A famous cartoon from the 90s. In the Australian, I think it was Bill Leak when he was cartoonist.
Let me just jump back to a couple of comments, because not Paul. Good morning, Paul Henderson. But Rick has also said, I feel Instagram and such is the newsletter. If you will, for prints and books to really showcase the artwork. So it's kind of like it's an advertisement, basically. It is what Rick is saying. It's a sample. It's to catch your eye.
Yeah.
And we will have a look at your latest book. Now, your latest book is actually your 4th photography book
Yes.
that you've published with Wakefield.
Mm-hmm.
Wakefield Press. What for you? What goes into choosing a publisher? What goes into that relationship? Because obviously, I imagine, you need trust, you need understanding, you need to have creative freedom as well and control.
Yeah.
What goes into choosing a publisher? Because a lot of photographers, and I've published my own books from travel through just a small offshore print place, but what goes into that process for you?
The first thing is to actually find a publisher that will do art books. For them, it's often, if you talk to publishers, it's not an appetizing equation that they look at when they do these kinds of books, because they cost the publisher so much. So luckily in Adelaide, we have Wakefield Press, who do everything, fiction, historical stuff. They do the Sailor monograph every year. They often do stuff for Art Gallery of South Australia. So, I think they have, it's almost part of their charter to cover local art in the way that they do. I think, so that's the first thing, is to find a publisher that is actually open to doing this kind of thing. It'd be no point sending your work out to publishers who do fiction only, and to find that out later when they reject you, they say, well, we only do fiction. Better to do that research before you even approach these people, by going to book fairs, for example, or doing some pretty thorough internet research. It's the same with galleries. If you want to approach a gallery in America, you better be sure they carry photography before you spend $200 sending your book through airmail. The first thing is, do they do it? The second thing is there someone in the organization who is actually sympathetic to photography and art? And if so, form a relationship with that person and start sending them your work, and start proffering photography as viable for them, and they may have an open mind to that. So once you've done one book, and I did my first book with Wakefield Press in 2014, it was called Adelaide Noir. It was a nighttime long exposure photography book of industrial areas and suburbs in the west of Adelaide. And we had a great launch, and they probably only printed 2,000 copies of it, but they had to go into a reprint. So once they do a reprint, they've made their money back on the first print run.
Right.
So that's what your aim should be when you do deal with a publisher, is you tell them that we will sell, we as in you and them, because you're going to be a big part of that selling. We will make sure that you sell out your first print run of 1,000 or 2,000 books, and if you can do that, they will respect that, and they'll be open to the next idea, which you come at 3 years later, which happened to be a portrait book. I did a book of street photography and portraiture, and they were open to that. So it's a step by step. Relationships. That's the thing. It's all about relationships when it comes to galleries and books.
I want to, speaking of your books, I want to bring up your latest book, which you published last year. Is that correct? Distance and Desire.
Yeah. Is it easier if I bring it up, Greg? Have you got 2 monitors running at the moment, or?
I do.
Oh, sweet. Oh, you're all over it then.
All over it, mate. Let me just find it.
Because I've got it right in front of me, and it's
that's lovely for you.
Freaking awesome.
It is freaking awesome.
Yeah,
I've been scrolling through it all morning. For those of you that are listening to the audio podcast, Alex, can we put a link to this in? Is that possible to put a link to this in description, Justin?
I can put it in there, for sure. As long as Alex is happy with that, and unless do we want to try and make people buy this thing? Should we do that, or is it a bit of both?
Wakefield Press.
All right, we'll
Google
do that.
Wakefield Press and Distance and Desire, and you'll get the link to the landing page for the book.
That's a good idea. We'll put that link in the description, Justin.
Yeah,
to the Wakefield one. Yeah. So, for everyone watching and listening, we're just scrolling through some of Alex's. These are all medium format.
Oh no! There's medium format. There's 35 mil. There's infrared,
Oh, yeah, I see.
digital
Yep.
image
This one on the
on the right.
infrared. Yeah.
Infrared, which I enjoy shooting once in a while. But yeah, mainly medium format, such as
Yeah.
that double page there. You know, that the one on the left was shot with my Yashica. My one on the right was shot with a Hasselblad.
Yeah. And we can see here that it's got down the bottom of each photo what sort of film it was.
That's what struck me so much just looking through this now while you've been talking, is that there's such a range of mediums and you've
and subjects too.
Yeah, subjects and mediums, and you've noted them there that you know some of them are shot on a phone. You know,
digital SLR,
slide film, negative film, digital SLR. And it's all in there and it all works together. And if you had, what was really interesting popping into my head was like, if you hadn't put that there, what would I be thinking? You know, if we could have covered all those little notes up and I could go through and pick what this was shot on, what would my mind have told me that it was shot on? I love it. It's quite amazing.
This photo here on the left is 120 negative, and this one on the right is digital SLR. But I love how that your digital photos have that film quality, Alex. They have a very I
mean, I shoot old lenses. The series of lenses that I have for my Nikon D700 is the E series from about 1981. You know, they have a very film look, those lenses. You know, which helps me. You know, often I would have shot film that night as well. Like I said, I'll bring both. And you know, when it's digital SLR, it means that it's a better image than the film image in my book. You know, and that could be aesthetics, it could be sharpness, it could be many things. But you know, I'm not a film Nazi. I don't shoot everything on film and tell people that this is the way it has to be. I'm much more pragmatic. And you know, if the iPhone pulls a better shot than the 6x9 Fuji, I'll use that in the book. And in the end, it's not really up to me. It's up to the designer of the book. And I give him 2,000 images, and I say, look, I'll see you in 3 months' time. And that's when he delivers the first rough draft. And you know, I don't have anything to do with how the book is laid up. You know, that's his gig. Nick Phillips is his name. He's a brilliant artist from Leeds in the UK. His partner is Heather Kroll, who runs the Fringe here, and he does the Fringe program every year, as well as just being an amazing artist. He worked at a design company in the UK called the Republic Design. They did a lot of the 90s, you know, music album covers of Aphex Twins and, you know, some of the really pop, you know, sort of underground music that came out of the place then. And he lays the thing up, so he just has access to these 2,000 images, and I don't have anything to do with it. It's up to him.
Wow, that's so cool.
I guess that comes from me being back in the day a filmmaker, and you know, having an editor, and you know, that editor works alone. There's no interference there. I think you have to be careful with separations of power when it comes to, you know, when you're in an art form, which is, you know, it is collaborative. Making a book is just not me, it's 10 people.
The way the book is put together is beautiful. I really enjoy looking through, and a lot of the horizons or lines will line up across multiple pages, but like, you know, exactly this image that Greg's got up there, but they're two completely foreign places, you know, probably shot a long time apart. But the way that they join is beautiful.
Yes, and that, you know, he's suturing images, you know, metaphorically to, you know, follow a theme. And if, you know, if you look at the whole book, you'll see that sections of the book carry a theme, and he's able to sort of speak to that theme through his design work. You know, I would never have thought of this kind of thing. I'm not a designer. I probably, you know, if it was left to me, I probably would have used all the you know, shots that were shot on a Hasselblad, you know, or all the shots that got likes 5 years ago, or whatever, you know. But he doesn't think like that. He just thinks, what is the story, what is the aesthetic, and what is, you know, what is it we're trying to pull out of the series, you know, much like a curator would do when you're working in a gallery scene. You know, a curator will will find things that that you benefit from his or her expertise, and you better listen to that person, because if you don't, you sort of end up, people think you're a bit of an asshole because I have a word. It's an askhole. ASKHO. An askhole is someone who sort of asks for help and then doesn't take the advice.
Oh, people like that in my life.
And there are a lot of askholes in the arts. They will sort of pretend to want to have someone's expertise and then not do that person's suggestions. And I just think that's a fatal mistake in the arts. I think it's a collaborative thing. And you better listen to people who know more about something than you do, and take their advice. I think it augurs well for you if you do that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would just be looking to hear someone agree with what they thought initially.
Yeah.
In that kind of situation,
confirm my idea so that I can feel good about it and move forward.
Validate me so I can then keep going on my solo journey without you.
Amazing. I'm not going to go through any more images on the book because I think people need to take a moment to have a look at it themselves. And Justin's put some links on the in the chat for anyone watching or listening along, so you can have a look at it.
So the link's in the chat. I'll put it in the description as well, but I just bought it. But hang on, the payment has been approved. Yeah, it's done.
Such a suck up.
It's
such
on the
a
way.
suck up.
No, I want to see it in person because seeing it here is pretty epic. But I want to turn the pages.
Yep.
It's getting around. I mean, last week Nick Mitrovic from the National Gallery, the director, picked it up for the National Library at the Art Gallery, the National Gallery in Canberra. So
congratulations.
And this gets back to permanency because of the ephemeral nature of the internet. When you get a library or an art institution or a collecting institution that actually takes the thing, you know what that means, and that means that in 1,000 years that book will be at the National Gallery in Canberra. And really, this kind of beats back against this idea of art being ephemeral, and it was something I was trying to get away from with filmmaking, is that once a film is made and done and dusted, it kind of may never be seen again. Whereas with this kind of two-dimensional work, it is in a gallery somewhere forever. Long after I'm gone, there'll be work that a school child might see on a trip to the National Gallery and go, well, that was South Australia 1,000 years ago. So this is the way to combat the blues of the internet. The internet blues is to actually make stuff that is physical.
And would that be your advice to anyone that explores photography to have a crack at making a book?
I would say the first port of call would be to have a group exhibition. I think a book's a really hard thing to do, and I could spend 2 hours talking about how difficult it is to actually have a book published and work with publishers on essentially a break-even proposition. I think beginners, we have a thing called Sala in South Australia, which is a month in August of exhibitions and anyone, anything, as long as it's art. It's a free festival. It was set up by Paul Greenaway, who's one of the really big gallerists here in Adelaide. He set it up about 20 years ago, and it's just taken off. And whenever I get a question, what should I do with my capacity to be an artist, I would say first thing first is to have a group show, and produce your 5 works and frame them and have a show and have a big launch, and get people to see your work physically on the wall and sell it, and don't be ashamed to put a price that you think is reasonable on that work. If it's a 75 by 50 centimeter frame, I tell them $500, because it's going to cost you 100 and something to make the thing, and then you're going to make a bit of money. So I would say a group exhibition is really the first thing that I think, photographers in common who like to go out together and shoot similar things should put together a show and, see the work in real life on a wall. I think that's essential.
I think it's a bucket list item for a lot of photographers to have some, we've talked about goals and challenges and projects on the podcast quite a bit with various guests, but having my own experience, but also talking to other photographers a lot in the community, everyone has some sort of ultimate goal. Yeah, I'd love to do an exhibition one day, or I'd love to put my work up in a cafe, or, we were talking a few weeks ago to alumni of the show, Nev Clark, and, he's got a local cafe that he's created a relationship with, and they sell his calendars, and some of his works are up on the wall there. And it's a nice little give and take proposition for them. It's not excessive. It's just, the cafe's got some nice art on the wall. Nev pops in there regularly for breakfast and coffee, and everyone's kind of happy, and Nev kind of has achieved a bit of his goal. Exhibitions can be quite intimidating though, can't they? To put your work up there.
Yeah, to put your work up there, and to have people turning up at 6 o'clock with a glass of wine in their hand, and that's going to loosen them up anyway. They'll start to be honest, intimidating. But I guess, having started the caper early and having put yourself out there many times, first through filmmaking and then, through photographic work, I don't have those insecurities. However, I can appreciate and sympathize with people that do, and people who are in the arts may have a certain disposition in their character anyway, which makes them, averse to putting themselves out there. My advice to that point would be that vulnerability, that shyness, or that questioning you have is actually your strength, and you should use that when shooting. Because really, what are we if not photographers who are trying to find out about the world and about ourselves? So see it as part of a character building continuum, rather than a one-off, frightening event. It all is useful, and that vulnerability, shyness that you feel on opening night is actually why you are doing the thing in the first place. If you were to drill down and get very granular, you would probably find that people who are nervous about art, which I think is normal, are actually trying to discover something about themselves through their art. I don't think it's an ego trip. I don't think it's a coolness thing. I don't think it's a hip thing. I just think it's actually a search for truth. And I think anyone who's out there taking photos on a regular basis are probably trying to psychoanalyze themselves at some point. And what you find may not be nice, it may not be comfortable, but you're out there again the next week doing whatever you're doing. You're trying to find something that is gnawing at you. It might be a bit annoying, it might be frightening on opening night, but I think the day after you probably feel pretty good. Fight through it. The next day you'll be taking phone calls from people saying they love your work, and how much for this one, how much for this trip. And once that happens and it becomes a commercial proposition, it makes it a lot easier next time. It's amazing how much an EFT transfer to your bank account gets rid of a lot of the shyness.
the ultimate validation.
That solves a lot of worries when you start to be able to pay off your credit card by selling your work.
Who needs anxiety medication?
when you've got cash.
And when you've got a camera.
I have some camera questions. Oh yeah, sorry, Greg, go on.
No, I'm just introducing you. You can speak.
Welcome to the show.
My turn. Thanks, Greg. Speaking of cameras, I have some camera questions because of the broad variety that you choose from to make your art. First question is, do you choose a camera for what you're shooting, or is it literally what you happen to be working with that day is the camera that captures that moment, or do you walk up to a scene and you go, I'm gonna use the 35mm for this because, or whatever, or is it more serendipitous to, I took my 35 with me that day, that's what I shot this photo with because that's what I had and I was there?
It's almost always premeditated. So at the moment, I'm halfway through a project in America. I've been 3 months to America in the last year, shooting from West Coast to East Coast. And when the clock is ticking, and that every day matters, you've got to be very clear in your head about what you're going to shoot. So if I'm shooting street photography in downtown Los Angeles, on a reasonably, sunny day, which is more than likely in Los Angeles. It's sunny most of the year. I'm going to be shooting with my Nikon FE35mm film camera. That's just what I'm going to have. I'm going to have 4 rolls of Kodak Tri-X in the bag. I'm going to have a 50mm, a 28mm, an 80mm ready to go, and I'm going to be sitting on the tube heading towards Venice Beach with my 35mm Nikon FE around my neck, and that's just my happy space. If I've got the Hasselblad in the bag too with a roll of film, well, that might be useful if I'm shooting something vertical, if I'm near a building where the vertical extra height is a big plus. But no, I'm going to have my film camera with me. I'm going to be developing a roll that night in the hotel room.
Oh, wow.
At 9 o'clock in the evening, because labs in America are a real hassle because the place is so big. You've got to travel an hour to get to the lab. So forget that. So I'm going to be processing using just black and white chemicals in the hotel. So premeditated. If I'm traveling across country through Nevada, say sort of from LA to Vegas and then Vegas to New Mexico, I'm probably going to have the 6x9 Fuji because it's a landscape camera and it's a big landscape area. There's not a lot of vertical height. There's a lot of flatness, so it's very South Australian. I'm used to it. And you're going to have mountains that are stark, that that you can, like we have here in the Flinders Ranges, that I can use my 35, use my 6x9 Fuji. So again, premeditated. I'll probably have the D700 just in case I leave the lens cap on the 6x9. But
we've all done it.
Oh, that's the question. So, do you shoot if you're at a perfect scene? Say you're traveling through the US, you're not coming back there anytime soon. Do you shoot essentially backup shots with the D700 regardless, or would you only do that if you were like, I just not sure what's happening with the film, so I'll take some, or do you do it every time?
I would only use the D700 as a backup if it was low light and I was using longer than normal exposures with my film cameras. And if I was hand holding, because you're locked into an ISO when you're shooting film, and I wasn't sure that the hand holding was not going to give a little bit of blur that wasn't what I want, then I would shoot digital as a backup. But if I'm shooting in plentiful light, at sunny 16s, no, I'm not going to shoot the D700.
Okay. Yeah. You don't whip it out and say, I'll just get one just in case something goes wrong, or in case I leave the lens cap on or something.
Yeah, you got to trust in the process. Yeah, you got to trust in the process, trust in your skills, the camera, the film, that you've ticked all the boxes in prepping the film. All of that stuff.
And Justin, when you're shooting many rolls, you get used. You're shooting a lot of rolls. You start to not worry about those things because you're doing it so routinely that it's like driving a car. You're going to have it's almost a reflex action, and you're not worried.
Memory.
You know that. Yeah, it's muscle memory. That's it. That's the word. It's the visual memory and muscle memory. Yeah.
Justin, I think that you might have been beaten by Alex in terms of the amount of gear he travels with.
Well, that was another question I wanted to ask. So what do you take to the States? Also, Greg, I took one camera to the US for 3 months. Camera.
But what did you take to the river? Everything.
I threw the whole bag in the car, but I didn't.
What did you take to Bright?
He had a van, Greg.
Where did I go to Bright? Oh, it's a BFOP. Of course I took all the gear to BFOP. It's a photography festival.
You
like to hassle me. I take less gear than you do. You take little lenses and stuff. I didn't even take those.
Shut up. Big lenses.
So I would like to know though. So you go to the States. You've obviously got an itinerary planned, and I can. What am I trying to say? I feel your pain of traveling in the US because it's not necessarily the clock is ticking; it's the wallet is ticking. Every day that we were there was like a dagger through my heart of buying food and everything. It's so expensive at the moment.
A dagger through your wallet. Yeah, there was a time in the 80s. My dad went to a conference in Miami, and I came when my mum came as well, and everything was $1. You could buy a burger and a Coke and a taxi ride with $1. Everything was $1. But that was 35 years ago. Now America's very different. They've had the inflation crisis that we've had, plus the fact that our dollar is so weak versus theirs means that, that the clock is ticking, the wallet is ticking. And so you've got to find ways to, mitigate, the huge expense that traveling across America entails. Do you
want to know what our food strategy was? It might come in handy if you get stuck, if you run out of money.
Did you just go and buy a whole lot of stuff at like a 7-Eleven and just live on that for a week?
No. Because we try not to eat the worst food ever, but this was still pretty bad.
Yeah.
You go to a Walmart.
Yep.
You get a fresh roast chicken, which I'm sure are injected with all sorts of stuff, but we couldn't worry about that.
Yep.
It was food. So you get fresh roast chicken, hot, a giant bag of corn chips, and they actually have some really good fresh salsa. And that's a meal. That's like that's a really good meal for two people with a lot of calories for not too much money. And other than that, it was just like survive.
Yeah, well, my partner Kate, she became very adept at knowing exactly how much to spend in order to not spend $100 per meal as you were driving across states that most people wouldn't know much about, and economically you'd think they'd be a bit cheaper than California and New York, such as Oklahoma. But no, unfortunately, all states are expensive. The Midwest, the South, the towns that that are really kind of struggling, with one shop. I mean, it's amazing how America has changed since those days in the 80s when we went last time, where it was $1 a meal and everything was $1. Not now. Not now.
Yeah. I'm a bit conscious of time because you've only got a few minutes left with us. Sorry, Justin.
I've got another half an hour. I've got another. I can leave with you for another half an hour. I'm in Adelaide time, so I've got to leave. I've got to leave at 10 Adelaide time, so I can keep going.
All right. Got a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's bring up one. We've got one from Rick Nelson. So Rick asks, do you have a daily carry camera even when not traveling? So do you always carry a camera with you? What is it?
Yes, I am one of those people that probably feels like they're missing an arm or a leg if I don't have a camera on me at all time. So I think that camera would be the Nikon FE 35mm camera. That's nice and small with a 28mm lens. I can basically fit that in my pocket. It's not very comfortable in the pocket, but I can have that on me all the time. And I guess at the end of the day, you've always got the mobile phone, and my old Samsung S20, I think this is here, S20 Plus. It shoots a decent raw file. So, I do either have a mobile phone or a Nikon FE on me at all times.
Well, that kind of rolls straight into a question I try and ask most people, which is, the world is ending. The zombies are here. It's full zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
And you can grab one camera and one lens to document the demise of civilization. What do you grab? Is it that?
No, it'll be the Hasselblad F501C with an 80mm prime.
Fuck yeah, that's cool.
That gets you through most situations. I've found that camera to be incredibly resilient. You can even shoot sort of 2 stops under and rescue it in the developing stage, and so the shots might be grainy of zombies devouring, shopping centres, but at least you've got a bigger format, so 6x6 centimetre, and it's robust. 35mm film.
Probably double as a weapon.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you could. Yeah. I mean,
swing it on a strap.
Yeah.
So, isn't it a waist? Is it a waist level viewfinder though? And they're the ones that are like backwards. Isn't that dangerous when you're looking down and you're trying to line this thing up, and then there's zombies everywhere?
But then you can look up as well. You can just look up.
It can be waist high, but there's an attachment that can make it into a sports finder. So I use the sports finder even when I'm doing street photography, where I can see waist high is very useful. The laterally inverted image tends to be a bit distracting, so I just use a sports finder, and it does give you quite a bit of protection. If a zombie were to throw a flat screen television at you, you could probably it protects you. It's a huge camera. You feel safe. You feel safe behind the house. It's like a Volvo. It's a Swedish thing. They're boxy, but they're good.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I think that's the best answer we've had so far to that question.
So too.
It's really good.
David has joined us. David's in the Bay Area, San Francisco.
San Fran, yeah.
David's a street photographer with probably more cameras than Justin. They're all film.
All film.
Almost all film. Sorry, just back from a city walk, but I've been listening on my phone. Question for Alex: what do you do with your chemicals when you're done? And you just answered your question and 35mm camera choice. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so with the chemicals I use Kodak HC110 syrup, which is a one-shot developer. So that goes straight down the drain and safely. With the fixer, you're basically retaining the fixer for 8 to 10 goes, and then you're taking it to the lab. And what the lab does is they have a silver retention process where they collect silver, and I always think they actually pay for their end-of-year Christmas party with the silver. They can dispose of it and make some money out of it. So I don't put it in the backyard. Fixer is quite potent, and if you put fixer down the drain, you'll get the local water authorities eventually will get onto you, because silver is a heavy metal and it's coming out into the street. So got to be careful. You can I have actually put it into the dirt, but the tree that was there looks very silver now. It has actually changed color. I did it as a bit of a test, and I have actually photographed the tree over 3 years, and it's looking not well. The silver has actually yielded, I think, in some way. So be aware of the chemical, the drive chain with, you're using quite potent chemicals. Nothing like the old days with the daguerreotypes in the 1890s, and so where people had to suit up, and with some of the arcane processes where mercury and cadmium were at play. It's not like that, but it's not 100% organic. It's chemistry. Yeah.
And just a follow-up point on that from David, he used the F3 and 28 Ti today on his street walk.
Yeah, nice camera, the Nikon F3. Of course, culminating with the F6, I think, was their final film camera before digital. But yeah, any of the F series, FMs, FEs, great cameras. There we go. Yeah. Beautiful.
F5, isn't it? Or is it F6?
F5.
It is.
It's not the last one, but it's this thing. You could beat a zombie's brain in with this thing. It's rock solid.
Yeah. Well, isn't there a Nikon where a Vietnam War journalist was protected by the chassis of the thing? A bullet caught into the Nikon and saved his life, essentially. And
did it keep working?
I think it didn't, but you wouldn't care. The fact that
you wouldn't.
He kept working. That was the point, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to look. It's something for camera buffs to find out that camera. If you do an image search, I think I saw it in relation to a Kubrick documentary. Maybe one of his cameras, or he bought a camera. It's something for sleuths to find out about the Nikon that saved a journalist's life.
I think David's already got it.
David's already got
the sleuth.
It was an F2.
Don McCullen was the name of the guy. Hang on, I'll bring it up.
There we go.
I'm on it.
David's our very own Google.
While I pull this up, just you do realise that earlier you made Jim's day when you said that you shoot with a D700.
Yeah.
That's Jim's version of an AU Falcon. He put a lot of kilometres on a D700 back in the day.
It's just a tank. I've dropped mine a couple of times, and I've thought, sort of in a liberated sense, well, now I'll have to get a new camera. But unfortunately, it survived. It survived the drop, and I've had to keep using it because I don't have an excuse to replace it. But yeah, it is a tank. It's no video. It's just stills. And I love that thing, and I think it's one of those things that'll always have. No matter how hard I try and get rid of it, it'll still persist. Oh, there it is. That's the one that copped a bullet.
That's apparently the camera that saved Don McCullen's life, the Nikon F.
Wow.
I would read the whole story out to everyone, but I think you have to be a subscriber to this website to read the story. So sorry. I shan't be doing that. But
So
yeah,
I think the pentaprism saved him. I reckon it caught the top of the camera. I reckon.
yeah, it looks like
Yeah, it's hard to.
Somewhere
Yeah,
over
like on
there,
that corner
maybe.
there.
If you do need an
Wow.
upgrade, Alex, the D850, if you wanted to keep with a DSLR, that
Yep.
would be a still a good robust camera.
Yep.
But obviously it's, I guess, a decade newer probably.
So the 850, yeah, and that had video, didn't it? I think
It did. It wasn't. It's
it does.
It's good.
We don't
but
use
it's
it.
not. Yeah.
No, you would go to mirrorless if you were going to shoot hybrid video as well.
Yeah.
You would definitely go to mirrorless. But if you wanted the best DSLR ever made, the 850 is that for sure.
Interesting.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful camera.
It's a bit smaller than the 700, or about the same size.
I reckon even bigger.
Maybe even tiny bit bigger. But yeah,
it's a good size. Like
Yeah.
I reckon because the 700 wasn't huge. You know, when you compare it to like a D3 or something like that.
Of course, yeah. There's those ones too. Yeah, the early digital ones. Yeah.
Alex, what's on the cards for you next? Now, this afternoon you're off to the Adelaide Fringe Festival, but I mean, broader, bigger projects. What have you got on the cards? What are you planning?
It's all about America at the moment. So I mentioned the 3 trips in the last year. I would say that constitutes about half of the project. So, I do projects in long form over a year or two. And I think many photographic artists do that. So, the piecemeal trips will continue. And, at the end of that, there'll be a show somewhere. I think a local show. We're in early discussions with a big venue here in Adelaide for a 2006 launch. And so that might give me 2 more trips back to America to feel like I've actually done justice to the series. The series is really about American decline. We are in an era of empire decline, most clearly personified by America, I think, at the moment. Where will that lead? Is it a collapse? Is it a civil war? There's all sorts of different outcomes that may occur. I love the place, but I do feel that, that we're seeing something major, something worth photographing and emotional. And, we have our problems here in Australia. If I walk into the city, I'm going to see 40 or 50 maybe homeless people. Yeah. But if you walk into downtown Los Angeles, you're going to see 20 or 30,000 homeless people. And, if you go to the Tenderloin in San Francisco, you're going to see Dante's Hell. These are the things that are going on at the moment. So, major problems. I don't think the camera should revel in this environment. I think it's incumbent on the artist to be humble and to document and make sense of it all, rather than to, come in with polemics and invective. I leave that to the Facebook warriors, the memes and stuff about America and Trump. I'm not interested. I'm interested in the human aspect of it, and to be close to it at pivotal times, such as last year at the election. I was in New Orleans, traveling through the spine of America, through the Deep South, which, I learned a lot about. The curiosity of wanting to know what goes on in a certain place is, a big impetus to make art. And, what I discovered about the South was completely different to what I had learned about the South, reading the New York Times or Fox News. The polemics, if you're talking polemics of left and right, the actual truth is neither of those two things. So, that's what I'm doing it for. It's purely to learn and to be curious and to understand the place. And, at the end of that, there'll be an exhibition, potentially a book, but like I said, books take forever and they're so hard to do. So, I think physical exhibition is, key.
I love the overall concept, the fact that there's something's happening, something's changing, and it needs to be documented, but it opens the question as to sort of what is it, what is happening. We're not 100% sure where it's going, but it's going somewhere.
Absolutely.
And I love that you're tackling it despite because in my mind I would be too scared. I'd be like, oh, someone in the US will do a far better job because they're there and they're there every day, so they can do so much more work, and so that would be I guess a limitation in my brain of I could never do that. That's for somebody who's on the ground, 365 days a year. So I really admire the fact that you're taking it on and you can put your own perspective on that, documenting this process and this time in history. But what I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about is the specific planning for the photography side of this project. How much planning do you do, or do you do planning around your trip and the locations, but the photography evolves on the ground once you're there? Or are you literally trying to plan in more precise, I want to go to this location to take photographs, or are you going, I want to go to this city and immerse myself in it for a number of days and then see what photographs come out of it? Like, how does that process work for you?
It's almost always both. It's a combination of geographic planning. So the overall project is, I'm going to go from west to east. So that's the first thing. So how do you get there? So the second thing is, what interests me about this time in American decline, and how can that be visually represented? So the most obvious answer to that is ghost towns. And so if you travel through a state like Nevada, you are going to see everywhere the vestiges, the artifacts of the 20th century, the silver rush era, as it were. For Nevada was built on silver. You will find towns that are completely deserted, which spoke of better times. So that's a very easy way in, is to sort of find a metaphor, decline, of decline, and then make it so. Be very linear, be very sort of obvious. So you go to a ghost town and you get every visual metaphor for decline that you can think of. You find old shops, you find old gas stations, you find one person living there, you find vestiges of a brighter past rather than a brighter future. So do those easy things. The harder things are to do with people. So if you want to, if I'm wanting to photograph gun culture, I'm going to organize that. So I'm going to ring people and, maybe go on Craigslist. I've done that. And, put a question out to the hive mind. Does anyone know, gun crazy people who are comfortable to talk about it and, who won't be judged and that kind of thing? And so when I got to Los Angeles, I knew of these two Armenian women who were right into guns, and they owned guns and they hired guns out, and they hired guns to movies, and they had fake guns and prop guns and everything.
Wow.
And so I went to their place, having organized a meeting, and, we chatted for an hour about Armenian politics, and the Kardashians and all this sort of stuff before we got to the business of shooting them holding guns. And even when we were doing that, they were talking about Hollywood, movies they liked, Al Pacino they'd met in a lift. So you sort of double up, and you not only do you get the thing you came for, the guns, you get their views on popular culture and their views on politics and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And so, if you're listening, you can really do a lot in a day. And it wasn't even a day, it was more like half a day. And we got a superb meeting. My partner and I, Kate, were there for half a day, and I shot a whole lot of stuff with them, with guns and without guns. And I got a pretty good view of their take on guns. And so I got images that I was happy with. And if I hadn't organized it, if I'd just sort of expected to meet people with guns, it isn't going to happen, because even in places like Texas, you don't see people walking around with guns. They may have guns hidden. They may have open carry, as some states call it, where you can actually walk around visibly with a gun, but you're not going to find it. You actually have to work harder. You've got to preempt and meet people and talk, and then you're going to get what you're after. Walking around won't do it. Occasionally you get lucky with something like hillbilly culture, for example, in Arkansas, the Ozarks. I happened to pull into a service station, a gas station, and saw a pair of check shirt wearing, overall wearing, gun toting, Trump supporting, no teeth having sort of God-fearing hillbillies. And this is, I don't use the word pejoratively, this is the word that they would use about themselves in a kind of ironic and humorous maneuver, to reclaim the word. So, and we got on fine. And, if you approach these people in the right way, i.e. not by conforming to a sort of a Netflix stereotype, and if you, understand, where they're coming from, you're going to have a chance of filming them. So, next thing is I'm back at their place and they repair cars. They're auto repairers, and we're filming them just talking and, sort of spitballing, and it was great. And, these people, what you understand when you speak to, I'll use the word again, hillbillies, because they use it. What you start to understand is the major part that religion plays in their lives, and how religion informs American life far more than it does here in Australia and Western Europe. It is a key thing, and they will use religion in any way they can to, talk about themselves, talk about their family, talk about where they were born, and to justify things that I may not agree with and that I might find reprehensible. But this is an honour to be able to shoot these things, and so your role is not to be a journalist. And this is where photojournalism can differ from fine art photography, is that you are not beholden to an editorial bias. I'm not there on behalf of the New York Times or Fox News or Murdoch. I'm there as Alex Frayne, so I don't have to parrot any lines and stereotypes that that readers may find easy to read and enjoyable.
There's no angle for you, I guess.
And binaries, so much more subtle when you're working as an artist. You're not editorially bound, which is liberating, but you're also, that doesn't mean that you have the freedom to be an asshole as a photographer as well.
Yeah, true.
Take photos under false premises and then, to then make fun of people by posting them on Instagram. This is not the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're, you're making these trips and you're obviously shooting a lot of film, you're either processing them that night or later. What steps are you taking to document these moments other than taking photos? Are you taking notes? Do you keep a notebook? Are you documenting parts of the discussions that you have with people?
I think it's all the photograph does all those things, So once you've done the processing and the scanning, instantly you have an impression of the time, and it will always remind you of that time and how you got to meet these two people in the Ozarks, and what an adventure that was. I don't really take notes. I mean, I have my mobile phone, which occasionally I just use as a sort of a documentary tool. But I think the process of being a photographer, and one of the upsides to the art form is that you do all those vertically integrated things. You're creating a memory of a memory, in a sense, a memory of a memory, and that is that photography, a memory of a memory. I don't know, maybe. You are doing many things at once, which there are limitations to the medium in that there is just the frame and that's all you have, unlike a film which has story and music and design. But there are other things that expand with the art form, such as this idea that it burns itself into your brain, the image. The image of the girl being napalmed in Vietnam. Who can forget that? And would it work as a film? Not as much. I think the power of the photograph is all.
That being said, and I know it's probably not possible, but it would certainly change the nature of your photography and your interactions with people. But man, this would make this is a YouTube series I would watch. If someone was just following you around day to day while you're having these conversations and making these photos, and then developing them at night, I would watch those videos. But the extra presence would obviously probably change everything. Having more cameras pointed at people and all that sort of stuff. And
it probably removes the intimacy that Alex develops between himself and the subject.
It's a funny thing, because so many times I've sort of wished that there was that third person, that was actually documenting the documenting. And having watched quite a lot of vlogs and enjoyed watching them, I think I wish that that can be done. I mean, that's an interesting thing, because perhaps the final trip could be done that way. So I could actually get a grant or apply for some funding, or find an angelic investor to fund someone to come along on the trip and to document the documentation of the series. And I thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, because
it would be amazing.
I think it's just given me the idea that if this is my last year of America, and I always hope that I will go back more and more. It's addictive, America, that I should actually do that. So yeah, that's something I'll just sit down and keep in the back of my mind.
Would you document it in film or in stills?
Well, interesting. That's another interesting question, because my favourite short film is the great La Jetée, which is Chris Marquez's Cannes Film Festival award-winning short film, which Bruce Willis then did 12 Monkeys based on La Jetée. But the original La Jetée, if you find it on YouTube, Chris Marquez, is a short film made up entirely of stills. And it's entirely about the end of the world and a nuclear accident that occurs. And it is one of the greatest short films of all time. And I've always thought that, perhaps rather than having someone with their Canon 5D doing video, is that what it was back then? Or maybe now it's a Sony A7. Rather than having video, actually have another a journalistic still photographer taking photos of me taking photos and putting together a montage in a sort of a narrative sense, like La Jetée, one of the greatest pieces of filmmaking of all time.
If I could get over there, I would do that. If there's one thing that I'm found that I'm reasonable at, it's taking photos of other photographers doing their thing while I hide in the background.
I've done that before.
That's about it. Exactly. I do. I think it would be amazing. Have you ever, even if you couldn't get a grant for like a full-on film production, but have you ever watched on YouTube the channels like people like Peter Santinello? That wanders around America with his GoPro, and they're like hour-long videos like that style of one where it's like, hey, it doesn't have to have a high budget of edit. It just needs a person that can do the job, but it does. You can use he uses a GoPro with a couple of mics.
The images are amazing, and I think I saw his stuff that he did to Oklahoma ghost towns. The guy got ideas from basically an old Depression era Dust Bowl, images in Oklahoma, which I spent some time in last trip. So yeah, there is that scope, especially in America, because you can go into a town and have free reign. You can go behind buildings and you'll see stuff and take photographs, and there's just no one around. And that happens a little bit here in Australia, but not as much. I think in Australia, when I'm out photographing landscapes and towns and ghost towns, I always feel that there's a pair of eyes on you, and Aussies are like possums, sort of hiding and watching.
Yes.
And the kind of I think it's a colonial, post-colonial sort of chip on the shoulder. Where in America there is absolute free reign with cameras. I think that's also because Americans half think that if you photograph them, they're going to be famous. It's based into an American psyche that somehow they're going to have 15 minutes of fame or become a star. And if they're photographed, that might just happen. So that's why I sort of say that America is addictive, because it's a photographer's paradise that you just don't have here. And walking around doing street work here, and jetty photography, and filming small towns, I just always feel a little bit of apprehension, which I just don't feel in America.
So it's interesting, because I've had that exact same feeling, but I've often wondered whether it's because I grew up in this culture, I'm more aware. But then when I go to other cultures, even a culture as similar as the US, but is still quite different from us, you kind of almost like switch all those things off. You're not looking for all these signals. When I went to Vietnam, it's just like, I just try to be respectful, but other than that, it's all good, you know. Whereas in Australia, I'm constantly thinking, oh, this person's going to be doing this or that, and it is maybe because I know too much. You know what I mean? So I'm overthinking it all.
I don't think so. I think there is an absolute difference in the cultures of post-colonial Australia with America. I think there's a completely different through line there, and I've tried to sort of decipher what it is about Australians that make them a little bit averse to photography, and being photographed, and you having to be careful, much more careful in Australia as a photographer. I haven't found the answer yet. It may be down to something like the slaves who were freed and who were very suspicious of authority, or someone who wielded a camera as it might be wielding a weapon or wielding power by having a camera, that Australians are sort of scared of that, perhaps. I do think it's to do with something colonial, whereas America, remember, post-colonially, they were Puritans who were actually thrown out of a place, Europe, and settled in America. And so they were used to sort of being objectified, in that moment of fleeing Europe and going to America. And of course, there's thousands of years of pre-colonial settlement in America that is a fascinating topic in itself. I mean, one thing I still can't get used to in America is, say, driving around, say Nevada and seeing reservations. That's that is confronting and political. And I also think part of this series of decline, that's different to Australia. So that's very different. We have similar things in South Australia. We have the APY lands, but we don't have reservations with mayors and a police force and a casino as they do in America. It was a big eye opener for how differently our nations have handled.
Oh, we've lost your audio.
Someone ringing. So yeah, I think there is a big difference culturally between the two countries in a post-colonial sense, and how that informs walking around, filming, and taking photos.
Yeah. It is interesting. I'm a street photographer and travel photographer, and when I was in Japan doing street work, other than the fact that I'm a big guy and I've got a big orange beard, well, it was orange back then, it's grey now. People just ignored the fact that I had a camera in my hand. So many people in Japan were walking around doing street photography, or just carrying a big ass Canon with a zoom on their hip. So many people were, and no one really noticed it. But in here in Australia, almost every time I went on a street walk last night, and someone walked out of a pub, out of Young and Jackson's, because it's a beautiful, it's got glass tiles, nice reflections and good light. And some guy walked out and then sort of followed me for a bit and said, "What are you doing? What are you taking photos of?" That happens almost every excursion now.
That's uniquely Australian, I think. And I don't like it, but I can't change it. What I think there might be a future photographic series in understanding that and deciphering it and sympathizing with it in order to create meaning. I think that, I think that we have to use that reticence somehow. I think in Australia we have to come to grips with it in the internet age, especially where everyone's paranoid, and know it, and therefore not fear it anymore. I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah, it is an interesting. I think Australia is a bit. I think Australians, part of it is Australians are a bit sensitive to, not technology, but surveillance.
We
all embrace it. We talked about this last week: doorbell cams, dash cams, street cameras. There's shop cameras, your ATM. There's just cameras everywhere. But we pick up. Even me carrying a small Fujifilm, point and shoot. I get challenged. Like for the most part, I look like a dad as a tourist. I'm walking around with this little point and shoot. It's not even a serious looking camera, but I still get challenged.
You guys might laugh at me. I didn't realize this, but there's at the supermarket I go to now, It used to, when you like scan something and then you'd sit it on the thing and it would go by the weight of the item or whatever.
Yep.
And then there's a new one that doesn't have that weigh thing. And I was going through that and I was like scanning my stuff and then it said, person required, like they'd come over and scope it out. And then she scanned her thing and watched a video of me scanning my stuff
and putting it in your bag.
A little camera at the top.
Yeah, the camera at the top.
I
I mean, it's their store or whatever, but I didn't realize. And then, so the reason it called her over is because, it saw there was some anomaly with the way I was scanning things and obviously thought, oh, you might have stolen something. I was like, I don't like that.
The
gates at the end. The gates at the end have cameras and sensors.
They have cameras too.
Yeah, they detect and they'll shut if they think that you've nicked something.
Wow.
There's also a camera like right in front of your face too, Justin.
Yeah.
To get like a head.
Years ago, I used
I'm
to.
going to bring stickers.
Lucky Straps ones, of course.
I used to be a cleaner years ago, and we're talking student days, and I'd go around to these horrible sort of wealthy people's mansions and vacuum and clean. And there was one particular guy who I just knew he was strange. And, this is sort of early days of surveillance in houses. And in the end, he sort of sat me down and he said, well, did you know that I've actually been watching you for the last 3 months, cleaning in every room? And I thought, oh, God, no, I didn't know that. And he said, well, I just don't think you're cleaning hard enough. And and I've got all the evidence, and if you want me to show you where I don't think you've been cleaning enough, I will be happy to show you that. And I just thought, what an asshole, what a dickhead.
Yeah.
Wow.
Get a life. So there is this sort of surveillance fetish, I think, which people sort of sit at work and during the lunch break they'll go online and look at their doorbell cam, and see
their pet camera. Cameras.
Pet cameras, baby cameras, all this. There's cameras, and it's. I wonder if it's a malaise of some sort that people do that kind of stuff. I think it's silly.
Yeah,
but like I said, there's a room for a series there. Surveillance culture in the modern era, sort of do a series of photos as if taken from surveillance cams of people in maybe compromising, artists, but actors, of course, doing things that are, that are somehow fetishized. Yeah, interesting.
Very
it's
interesting.
Another one. Add to the list. I better get going. I've got to shoot.
I was going to say, you got work to do.
Yeah. Well, just before you do head off, Alex, just on behalf of the Camera Live and the team at Lucky Straps, thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's been
incredibly fascinating and inspirational. And as a street photographer, I've learned a lot, I think, just listening to you. And for anyone that's watching or listening along at home, don't forget to check out Alex's book, Distance and Desire. It's at Wakefield Press. Links are in the comments, and we'll also put it in the description. And we hopefully one day we can have you back on in the not too distant future, and we can get an update on the series, the American series. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's timely, and I think there's going to be a lot of interest in that. So we wish you all the very best.
Thanks, Greg, Justin, and Jim. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Alex.
Have a great shoot.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See ya.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Amazing work.
Yeah, I can't believe how many images are in that book as well. I'm excited to get it now.
That's very cool. And I think looking through it, and then him explaining that he had a designer, I guess, put it together.
Yeah, that's also cool. I was just imagining him laying it out and everything. And then when he said that, I was like, oh, that's kind of the dream. Imagine handing all of your work to someone and then just they make a book out of it. You're like,
but that's what cool. Proper shows and exhibitions have, is they have a professional curator whose job is literally just sifting through, because I guess as an artist we're emotionally attached to something, and it just might not be the best image, but it means something to us. Oh, I've got to have that in there. Like how often we done it with sneak peeks, Justin, we're like, that's got to go in, and maybe it's not the best shot.
It rarely is. But we get attached to it and we love it.
Yeah, we are.
Quickly, Rick Nelson says, wonderful show. Thank you, Alex, for the insight. It was a wonderful show. I was very excited
thanks, Rick.
by the conversation. But Rick, you mentioned you work in a camera store. I saw that in the comment up here. You said, where is it? I see a bit of a trend of people chasing the newest tech each year, I guess. I work in a camera shop for context. Do you want to shout out what camera store it is in Brisbane? Where do you work? If you want, you don't have to. You don't want to out yourself on the internet. But if it's a cool store and we'll come visit one day, let us know where it is. And
road trip.
Add
it to the list.
He also said
we're going to have to do an Australian tour. Sorry, Justin. We're going to have to do an Australian tour at some stage.
I mean, we could start with an East Coast tour, maybe. But this is the thing. So I was looking at that work in that book, and I'm like, yeah, I could enjoy taking these kind of images, across the Nullarbor and shit like that. That would be fun. That would be. And then I was like, you know what? I'd need a GFX to shoot that stuff. Otherwise, it just won't be worth it. I'm kidding. No, seeing the variety of imagery. And I was actually, when I was scrolling through that, the book, I'm excited to get it in print, but scrolling through the PDF, the ones that stood out to me the most, it was interesting because I thought maybe I need to buy a medium format film camera, obviously.
Clearly.
No, they were all 35mm film, were all the ones that when I saw them, I was like, I love that shot. And I'm sure it's got nothing to do with, well, maybe he'd probably say it does have a lot to do with the medium that he chose for that shot or whatever. But it just shows that, medium format's not necessarily better or worse or whatever. It's the photographer making the image and doing the work.
Nick's replied. Rick. Rick, thank you. Bentley's Camera House in Candale. Would be great to meet you all sometime.
Nice.
You're what do you call it? Like a sister store in Croydon, Camera House Croydon. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary this weekend, I think, or next weekend. They're having a bit of a mini BFOP event, apparently.
Are they?
There's something going on with BFOP. BFOP are offering limited tickets.
Well, are they that? This
very
sounds
briefly.
bad. I should know because there was so much going on that weekend, and I met some wonderful people from the Camera House.
You did drink a lot of beer.
It wasn't the beer. It was just once there's too many inputs of like new people, it just all goes out the other side of my brain. Was it Croydon that were the Camera House for BFOP? They were the one that was there. Yeah, they were great
with Nigel.
Yes, that's
Nigel. So the public service announcement. This is on the BFOP. For those of you who don't know, BFOP is the Bright Festival of Photography that Justin and I went to last year, and hopefully Jim's going to join us this year.
Yeah, except he's got to shoot right in the middle.
I'll be there. I'll be there for some of it for sure.
Yeah.
So
what have we got here? Croydon Camera House is turning 40 this year, and to help celebrate, BFOP has decided to host our own little, in inverted commas, special event kicking off in the city for a wild series of activities, and with a stroke of luck landing us at Camera Croydon House for the afternoon festivities. We can't take all 600 of you, so you must register for a ticket.
Cool.
That only just popped up this morning. So little mini BFOP event.
Mini BFOP. A mini FOP.
A mini FOP. They're kind of ushering it under the radar because I don't know. I guess they can't have everyone from BFOP showing up because everyone's so desperate for BFOP activities.
I think you missed that, Justin. A cat went vertically up the corner of which way?
Oh, that's Biscuit. Yeah, she's.
You get a cat in your.
It went up, like vertically climbed up,
because
curtain or something.
What?
Long story short, no, it's a mattress. It's a queen size mattress. I'm in my son's room, in Brendan's room, and he's about to get a queen size bed because it's our old mattress. We've got a new one, and but we haven't got the frame yet. So it's leaning against the wall, and she uses it like a bloody climbing frame.
Yeah. Talking of Camera House, I've hopefully got a new flash arriving. Hopefully today.
Ooh. Oh yeah, you bought the Godox.
Yeah, Godox V1 Pro.
The round head.
That's the new one, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Pro's got like a little sub flash.
Yeah.
Underneath, so when you do portrait flash, that like doesn't cut off half your frame because the flash is obviously over the lens, so it directs it down a bit. I think.
Mm.
Have you look it up? Just Godox V1 Pro.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll bring it up.
Yeah, it's got a sub flash.
To be fair, I didn't actually. I think it's what I wanted, and I didn't do a lot of.
What do they call it? They call it a beauty light, don't they?
I don't know. I didn't really read. I was just like, I'm going to get the Pro. I'm going to get the good one.
I was surprised that you purchased something without checking with me first. You're really evolving.
I tried to. I wrote it in the comments, and no one
kind of a
replied,
control
so
freak are you?
No. It's not. I don't control it. It's just Jim just outsources his gear research to me.
So
usually
Google,
he would
Greg,
just say, "I need a new flash."
So instead of I don't Google it, Greg. I don't go, "What's the best flash for me?" I go, "Hey, Justin."
Yep.
What do I get? And he goes, "Oh, well, I've already researched this."
Yeah.
Jimbo, I don't think this
copious notes.
Jimbo, the sub flash isn't for portrait mode on camera flash shooting. It's for fill flash. If you point it, if you're bouncing off the roof, it gives you a little bit of fill. It's like instead of having a bounce card,
I'm not going to use that.
It's going to give you some forward fill. You might find.
I'm about to have a seizure from that video.
Oh, sorry. Moving on. Okay, it's got modern charging. Finally, USB-C charging. That's what like we used to have to do DIY our own stuff to be able to charge these things in our cars, but we figured that out. But now you've got USB-C. That's a big plus. It's fearless against time and speed. Fearless.
Yeah.
Fearless.
No fear.
I've never seen that marketing ploy for a piece of camera gear.
It's fearless.
Actually, Justin, I can plug that into. I've already got that power pack.
I've got one of those power packs, or have you got mine?
If it's the same plug, I can plug it into the old 360. Boom.
Oh yeah, it was a 360 one. Yeah. And I actually owned one of these power packs from before the 360s because you used to be able to use them to make other flashes recycle faster. But you'll be able to do that to get a boost. You'll probably never will. Oh, look, you could look like this. It does that.
Yeah. Well, see, this is my research now. Is working out.
Yeah.
But you've already bought it.
Well, I haven't paid for it yet, I suppose.
Legacy of expertise. Check out these. Oh, they're going to give Greg a seizure. Okay. So it's because it's still going to get the angle from the side to give you the shadow.
I didn't think about it.
But it's for bouncing. So this is a very specific application, guys. When you're outside and you want to bounce your flash off the sky, you can also get a little bit of fill flash from the front.
Maybe
we should be in charge of people's marketing photos.
I was watching a reel the other day on Instagram, and it was a photographer talking about on-camera bouncing flash, and she's like, "I only use it this way, or I use it this way." And I'm like, "Well, what if there's a wall to your left or your right, or behind? Like, why are you own? Like, that's not the only way it goes."
It was the first
designed it with a 360-degree thing almost.
We went to a Jerry Jonas workshop way back in the day, and that was the first thing he was like, "All right, you would all do this," because he took us into a room that was like what have I done? This is Greg.
Hey,
the Greg show.
Big Greg. He took us into a room that was like a traditional, I guess, not so much the wedding venues we shoot in, Jim, but like a Melbourne kind of wedding venue. So lowish roof, wide room or whatever, and he's like, "You guys will all just bounce off this roof and whatever," and then he's like, "Watch this," and just boom, shot it at a wall that was 20 meters away, and he'd come back and he's like, "Look at that light, isn't that better?" And we were like, "Yeah, that's better. You're right, Jerry."
You're the king.
And then ever since then, it's like you're constantly looking for a place to bounce off that's going to give you sort of a nice directional quality of light instead of just off the roof.
I don't think I've ever bounced it straight up either,
or off the sky.
Yeah, like the sky.
Off the sky.
The Kodok sky.
Yeah.
Maybe it was cloudy. Maybe it was cloudy. It's going to bounce off
marketing.
Maybe there was a low flying something.
Duck.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What else is new?
Well, that's a good purchase. What have you purchased this week, Justin?
Nothing.
Other than Alex Frayne's book.
So I bought Alex Frayne's book. I'm excited to get that added to my book collection. So we get things like the book, and then he says stuff like, a group exhibition is a great idea. And you know what I keep thinking? I'm like, I would love to have a space in Bendigo that was like little gallery, photo books, maybe coffee, maybe not. I don't know. That's a whole nother thing that I don't want to have to make the coffees.
There's Dudley House. Like, there's a
no. I'm talking like permanent. You know, it's like the Lucky office. It's got photos on the wall. Like you could rotate.
What about the mezzanine level at the factory? Would you get rid of all that junk?
and just go upstairs. Look, it's
I don't know if
freaking
everyone wants
hot.
to go to
It's
Longo
freaking
either.
hot in summer and cold in winter. It's not the most hospitable environment,
No, it's not.
particularly on that mezzanine in
And
summer.
maybe a bit far out.
Unless you wanted to sweat 20% of your body weight off,
true.
you wouldn't want to hang out up there, up the top.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. There's something very very appealing about that, I reckon, because you don't see those sorts of spaces much.
No, and it is appealing. And obviously, if it was in Melbourne, it would be far more likely to be successful, bigger population, blah, blah, blah. But Bendigo does have an arts culture, and we're accessible by
It's got
train.
an amazing gallery. You got Frida Kahlo coming this year.
Who's that? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Justin didn't do an arts degree.
I went to Mexico. I know who Frida Kahlo is. Rick Nelson says, a great comment. Hang on, I've wrecked my screen. Do you remember those speed lights that moved on their own? That died quickly.
No. What was that?
The Canon ones. They were like robo flashes.
What?
You don't remember?
And what, they would find a space to bounce, or
Yeah.
they would point at the subject?
Yeah, don't
No,
you remember?
really?
Speed light, what do I call it? Moves on its own. Come on, Google.
And what did it work it out like for you? Was that when we were both shooting Nikon, Justin? Like, was that in that period?
Unless Nikon did it. I don't know. Is it, what was it?
Nah, they didn't do it. I don't. Well, not in the last 15 years.
I misspoke earlier. Sorry, while you bring that up. The Camera House thing is May 10th.
Was it?
I thought it was this weekend.
Kenko. So what did you say, May 10th?
May 10th, yep.
Yeah. Olympus also have an open day coming up in open day.
Yes, they do.
I can't remember what it's called. 16th, maybe in March 16th for their, what do they call that? OM day? Something day?
Yeah.
I don't know, but get onto that if you, not Olympus, OM Systems. What am I talking about?
OM Systems. And Fuji have got their one this weekend coming.
Oh, if you're in Sydney, the Creator Summit. You can go back to one of our previous episodes if you want to find out what it's about. The Creator Summit on February
48.
Yeah, Feb 22nd and 23rd at Luna Park in Sydney, which would be very cool. I can't find these flashes.
I think you dreamt it.
Canon flash.
Here we go.
Robot.
AI flash.
Also Canon Speedlight.
470EX.
Yeah.
Try that one.
Yeah.
Rick's been super helpful today.
I think we need to get Rick on the show.
Rick. Yeah, let's get him on.
AI flash. AI, of course it's AI. Did it have a neural network as well?
Maybe it's a lowercase l.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hang on. Oh. Check it out.
How is he controlling that? Is he controlling that?
No, he's doing it. It does it based on when you move your camera from portrait, like landscape to portrait.
That's dumb.
How long would that last?
I think
if
this
you're that
is a
lazy,
big deal.
if you're seriously that lazy that you can't work out where to point your speed light to take a shot.
Read this. I think this is a big deal, namely because it represents a big step towards democratizing artificial light for people who aren't yet comfortable with it. Democratizing artificial light.
That's a stupid statement.
It could also make wedding and events photographers' lives easier.
It could.
It's harder. Look how slow it is.
I mean, it could make it easy. You know what else could make it easier? Just learning how to use Flash.
Don't take on a wedding if you don't know how to use a Flash.
This was 2018, and it's now discontinued. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it must have cost a fortune to develop.
Rick says it's heavier. Rick, do they still sell that Flash, or is it discontinued? Paul Henderson. Yeah, I saw this one come up while I was searching for the Canon one. I had I think it was a Kenko AI flash, cheap but not great, as better as a manual flash. So did it move? Did it move around, Paul? Robo move, and was it any good? Comments are coming in thick and fast. David Mascaro wants to know, do you guys know anything about Substack? Looking for another option other than Instagram? I've heard, I don't go on Substack, but I've heard it's more for finding journalists and that kind of stuff, like independent journalism. And you can sort of subscribe to your own curated journalism feed, kind of like, remember, Greg, do you remember blog feeds back in the day? Remember you used to be able to have like your own curated feed of blog articles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and so Substack's kind of, I know you still can, but no one writes them anymore. Except for you. You're the one person that's not using AI to make content that hopefully works for SEO.
Yeah, trying my best.
Trying your best to keep the
literally
flame
raging against the machines. I am that song.
Now, that's funny you mentioned that. So, Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello, the guitarist, when we were talking before with Alex about his kit, that basically he's locked into like 2008 or whatever he is, and he's just never. He's like, all right, I'll just turn off the camera industry because I'm good. You know, like I've got my stuff.
Pretty admirable.
Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, one of the most iconic guitarists of all time. He was having so many issues, like chasing us in the guitar world. We're always chasing a tone that we're looking for, and we can never find it, so we buy more gear. That's just a thing. It's a guitar thing, just like it's a photography thing. But it's probably worse with guitars because there are thousands of pedals and stuff you can buy to like tweak your tone to change on your amp and stuff like that. He one day just went, I'm not really happy with my tone, but fuck it, that's what it is from now on. I'm not changing anything. So he taped his settings on his guitar amp so he wouldn't twiddle with the knobs anymore. He stuck with a Marshall JCM 800 2205 or whatever it was. Same everything, same pedals. And he was just like, well, that's it. That's what I've got to work with. And like he evolved from there to be one of the best guitarists of all time with a tone. That's the funny thing though, is now, or, you know, especially when he was more popular, when they were in their sort of heyday, everyone was trying to get his tone. And he was like, I didn't even really like my tone. I just decided to stop fucking around with it and just go, okay, that's what I've got to work with. And he created a tone that everyone else wanted through that limitation.
That's crazy.
You know, it's a very cool mindset of an artist to be like, these are my tools. I'm sticking with them.
I think limiting yourself is, you know, same with gear, same with photography gear. You don't need everything all the time.
Yeah. It is interesting though. I ran a photo walk, as I mentioned last night in Melbourne, and I had 25 people show up from his camera club, which is a great turnout, maybe more. I actually got a bit nervous because I thought, oh man, it's going to take is someone from City of Melbourne to say, do you have a permit? But
you're getting paid, doesn't matter. If you're not getting paid. Like,
well,
like it's just a group of people on the street.
Yeah, I already had my cover story worked out in my head. But
I don't know these people.
It was interesting because I set challenges for them. You know, and I've often talked about this. I said it has to be, I want you to set your camera, not worry about it later in RAW. Set your camera to shoot 1-to-1 ratio. So square images.
Yeah, square.
So get rid of that whole consideration about landscape and portrait. And black and white, preferably JPEG, but I left that up to them. And it really stumped them. Applying limitation really stumped them. But at the end of the walk, they were like, oh, that was really cool. Yeah, no, and I found a lot of them going, oh, I keep going to do portrait mode when I see, but I don't need to. And I was like, well, you just take that out. You just work with what you can see.
Yeah.
One less thing to think about.
Yeah, but it also makes you to be more, it forces you to be more creative, I believe.
Yeah.
When you have limitations, it forces you to go, well, especially like, when you did the JPEG challenge, Justin, last year, midway through last year, it makes you think differently about what you're doing. You're not just relying on the megapixels to, crop it later.
Yeah.
You got to get it right there and then. So anyway.
Yeah, and square is it's just that little bit different that if you haven't shot with it, where you're like, okay, where do I put my subject? How do I frame this up? And it's just a fun puzzle for your brain to go through instead of falling back into your usual, sort of style you frame photos with. Yeah, it's very cool.
We've got a few minutes. Should we just jump to a quick news item?
I mean, we can, unless you want
to
save
leave
it for
that
Monday.
for Monday. Yeah, we'll save it for Monday.
It depends how cool it is. Anything exciting happening?
It's not that good. It's been a very slow news week. The news item is about the CP Plus camera and photo imaging show next week in Japan, in Yokohama.
I think we should go there.
I think we should go there. I've got a friend there at the moment. He's gone there. He works for Adam. he works with Lauer and Wandered. He's like,
yep.
yeah, well, you've met him. We met at BFOP, and but he's gone to Japan for a few weeks with his holidays, and attending the show. So very jealous. He keeps sending me images and photos of Japan. And I keep sending back one very pertinent word starting with C and ending with T.
Nice.
I hate him for it.
Cat.
Yes, I call him a cat.
He's a stupid cat.
He's a silly bloody cat. But so he's over. But we can talk about that on Monday because we'll have more. So next week it's going to be a lot of gear announcements, and the week after, and the weekend.
Rumors of some lenses and some stuff.
Mostly lenses.
Word on the street.
If we see a couple of cameras.
Word on the street is the CEO of OM Systems will be rocking around CP. Is it CP plus? C plus.
CP plus, yeah.
CP plus. That's hard to say.
Plus.
CP plus. He'll be rocking around with one of our camera straps.
Hey!
The new OM3. We sent a few over to the guys. Special care package to send over to CP plus. So that's pretty exciting. I begged them.
Cool.
I said, see if you can get a snap of the CEO wearing our strap.
Well done,
just a little sneaky phone photo or anything. I'll take it.
But you're right. We need to go next year.
Well, it's the perfect time because it's snowy.
Yeah.
Snowboarding.
You snowboard, Greg?
No, Jim.
Well, maybe Justin, I'll go.
You guys go. I'll just do street photography and eat ramen.
Yeah, and have you done snowy street photography in Japan?
No, I've never been there in the winter.
Yeah, you would love the different. Yeah, just that it looks completely different, and all the signs glow, and it's just so
the snow's dropping, and
well, as soon as Lucky Straps is paying for it, Sash and I we're happy to travel economy.
I'm not.
Come on, it's only 10 hours.
I'll be doing the sums, and I'll be like, hang on, all three of us could go in economy, or I could go by myself in premium economy.
Okay. So much for team Lucky Straps.
Yeah, we're a team. You guys can swim over. Oh man, it would be amazing if we could all go.
A cat.
No.
Yeah. Rick Nelson has dropped a comment that Japan is the dream spot to photograph. It is interesting listening to Alex talk about how he's addicted to the US. I have no desire to travel to the US, mostly because of what he's been talking about and what he's documenting, the decline, which seems to be accelerating. But Japan is my addiction
happy place
spot, Rick.
Yeah, I have to say, as someone who spent 3 months on the ground in the US, while I did see the stuff that he was talking about, ghost towns, a lot of homeless people, even in some very, very well-off places like fucking Venice Beach, anyway. Outside of some of that stuff, it has some of the most beautiful scenery and landscapes you'll ever see. It's 99% just regular people living their lives who are super friendly. Yeah. I think he can get drawn into, and that's why I do love that he's doing the project, and I want to see what he comes out of it, because there is something happening, and whether that's a full-on decline or whatever it is, but once you step away from that stuff, it is just people just like us, just living their life in a country that is spectacular with beauty and has such a variety of landscapes, and even the variety of states. It's almost like countries, whereas you don't get that as much in Australia. It's like Darwin does have quite a different feel to Melbourne, obviously, but in the US, it's like you go from state to state, and it's almost like you're in Europe going from country to country with the differences and stuff like that. It is very cool, but value for money, fuck, it's hard to justify spending too long there because it was expensive.
Yeah,
but
I'm glad I went to Japan when I did, because now it's so popular. Like you look at, especially during peak seasons, you look at some of the images coming out of Japan, and people are just wedged into tourist spots. Not that I'd always go to tourist spots. I tend to go backstreet country.
I think that's the key.
And I think that's the way to do it now.
Just to get out.
And I think the other part, it's not that I am racist towards Americans. I will admit that. Sash calls me racist. It's the only race I'm racist against. but I think I can't afford to travel a lot, and I've had some health issues. And I think if I can get back into travel, well, then why on earth wouldn't I go to Japan? I just can't think of anywhere else that I'd like to go, other than Bendigo, of course.
Of course. But yeah, in terms of, especially if you love it, there's probably still a ton of the country you haven't seen yet. So it's not like you're just going back to the same, stuff.
Yeah.
And how long's it been since you've been there?
So it was 2019. It was late 2019.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID hit. Upon my return on 2019, I was looking at planning photography tours in Japan and running a business. And then COVID hit. And so that all went to shit for a couple of years. And then I got unwell. And so I wasn't doing any photography, let alone travel. So Sash and I want to go back. Probably, the end of this year.
Or the start of next year when C++ is on.
Or, yeah, we could
maybe
make a bit of a tax thing. Tax / Lucky Strap sponsored travel.
Yeah, right. If we can get this podcast to 10,000 subscribers by then.
Oh, well, that's my job, isn't it? Really? That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Well, we've already, we crossed the 900 mark after the show with the Down South Photo Show boys.
We're at 925 right now.
Yes, it's gone up like 30 in the last week.
Pretty much. A bit over a week.
So for anyone listening out there, David, Rick, Paul, any of you, Digifrog, if you want to see Greggy back in Japan, please encourage your photography friends or non-photography friends to subscribe and like. And
that would be great. Share the show. Share the show with anyone if you can. If there's a photographer that you know that might get a kick out of it. Also, we're always looking for, we do have a pretty solid guest roster for the next couple of months, but we're always looking for guests. So if there's anyone that you're like, you know what, this person, because that's what I see our role in the world is. And obviously it's great to get people on like Richard Taddy, who's already got 80,000 subscribers on YouTube and 1 million videos and so much access to his knowledge. But there's all these photographers out there that just don't have the time to make YouTube videos, because it is a whole, like, it's a thing, making YouTube videos. Doing what Richard does is a whole, just, it's consuming. And there's people just out there just doing great work and they don't have time to do that stuff. So we can get them on here and pick their brains and have a bit of fun for a couple of hours. And hopefully get a little bit of access into the inner workings of brilliant photographers. So if you have anyone that in mind that you would love to see on the show, hit us up, throw it in the comments below and tell us.
Because our guests are booked up to the end of March. I've got a couple in April, but I will be sitting down and mapping out April to June. So I'm kind of doing it in quarters at the moment, because if you go too far out, people's lives change. But yeah, if anyone, hit us up in the comments or email Justin. We've had some of our past guests actually reach out to us and say, hey, have you thought about getting this person on? So we're gaining momentum. And don't forget, everybody, that we have 2 shows now. We have the Thursday morning Australian time and the Monday evening Australian time. We're playing around with the timing of the Monday one, because we want to, obviously also accommodate viewers in the US, because we have a lot of viewers in the US. But we are growing, and you can expect more content from us here at the Camera Life.
Lots of ideas. Maybe some YouTube videos at some stage. Maybe.
And we've got a few things. We've got a couple of road trips coming up. We want to go and catch up with John in Kyneton, John Umina, who was on last week, runs Lumina Film Labs. We're going to go and shoot some film and work with him developing and scanning our own films and getting that. And so we'll get some content for that. Street Walk, these 2 idiots have said for months that they're coming to Melbourne, yet I never see them. But we will, we will organise. You spent a whole day the other day finding like 3 sounds for the soundboard for this podcast.
No, God, please, no.
See? It took him a whole day.
I'm trying to hold them back during the interviews. I'm like, I can't be like crazy, But I got a good one for when like Leica release a new camera.
That's not bad. It's very Vicar of Dibley. But what were we talking about before we talked about your lack of time management?
Shooting Melbourne photo walks.
Yeah, photo walks. We've got content coming up. So it's there's more stuff coming.
For DigiFox
Monday
says,
show.
It's a pretty good day.
Hey, it's
You
the
could be
Monday
onto
show.
something.
Yeah. It's going that direction. I don't know. So this
a bit.
hopefully we'll have Grant on this Monday's show. Grant being a landscape photographer, passionate amateur. We might even talk a little bit. I read an interesting article about being a pro versus being an amateur or hobbyist or whatever you want to call it, photographer. And the perspective of this article I thoroughly disagree with. So that'll be fun.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go hard.
Okay.
And I don't know what else. If we get Grant on, what else we'll talk about, how his photography's been going. And he shoots with Canon, I shoot with Canon, so we can gang up on you guys who don't shoot Canon.
Whatever. I must say, though, Jim's looking very angelic today. Have you got a new lens or some new lighting or something, Jim? You look
There's
very
a lot of
sharp
colours
and
in the
crisp.
background is what I'm interested in. I can see, hang on, there's red, blue, purple,
Green.
and green.
Maybe green, yeah.
No, yellow.
What is going on? Yellow?
So
like
the
talk to me.
purple. Hang on, where is it? Okay.
You're backwards.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You're doing this? No, they can't do that on the internet.
Oh, okay. That little purple line is the light. That's daylight. And I've got LEDs that go up and around the window frame. And then they also go along the bottom down there.
What is your Twitch streaming handle?
Hey, to be fair, if you look at my background and your background, we are very similar colors. You've got the orange snowboard. I've got the orange light.
You can actually see my LED strips just dangling.
Whatever.
It's a very different setup.
Well,
All it's doing is
very
highlighting
clever.
your mess.
Yeah.
Look,
Oh, yeah.
I've just got, there you go.
Yeah. No, but I was talking more about the image quality. It looks very sharp and
It's
pristine.
the same as every other day. I think my internet's just working better today.
Oh, maybe that's it.
be.
One last quick comment from David. Would love to hear from a conflict photographer. We do have Christopher Hopkins joining us.
No, what happened to, we put him on the list. What's his name? And Russell Ord, I think, said he was great because he was in the comments one day. He's a Nikon photographer. We need to reach. We've reached out to him. I think we need to reach out to him again.
But Chris Hopkins is going to be joining us. He was meant to join us sooner, but then he was called away to the bushfires to report on those, which is the nature of that sort of work. Is that often they're hopping planes from disaster to conflict back to disaster. It's quite. I'd imagine it's quite exhausting.
Can you please, Greg, for me, please?
Yes, sir.
Make a note of this guest request.
Yes.
David Dare Parker.
Is that a double name? Like a hyphenated name?
No, it's just daviddareparker.com even is his website. I've got his email. And I think we did reach out to him. And I think I'll forward it to you. It was a while ago. He got in touch via Lucky for camera straps and stuff. But he is a conflict photographer, but has also done a heap of other stuff. And
cool.
I'm positive he was in the comments for Russell Ord's episode, and I think Russell Ord was like, that dude's a legend. And I think we'll have to follow up with him a fair bit because he's probably flat out similar to Chris Hopkins, like they're just working, Yeah. We'll just see how we go.
We can do that. I think that's about it for this week's standard issue, The Camera Life.
Yeah, the interview.
What do you guys say?
I'm just looking to see if I've got any other sound effects that would suit this time right now. Not really.
Well, your timing is fantastic.
Are you shooting the Savo, Justin?
With you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you might have to do the work, and I might see if I can load this F5 up with Ektar 100 that I've been thinking about shooting, and shoot film and just see what comes out of it, And I'll just help you do your thing. Jim's got a car to shoot, Greg. You should see this car.
Nice.
Can you somehow show us a photo, Jim? Can I do that? Can I send it to myself and share the screen? I think I can.
Yeah. Give me 1 sec. I've got it in. I can do one better, Justin.
What was one better?
Well, actually, you could actually. Have you got the Justin Jim Dropbox, Jay?
Kind of. Actually, maybe it's in my. If cloud works, no, that's not how that works.
You guys are
That is-
amazing.
You're
Such a
amazing.
slick machine.
Yeah.
We're good.
While J Dog and Jimbo bring up the elusive car images, just a reminder that this is the Camera Life podcast brought to you by Lucky Camera Straps from Bendigo, Australia. Make sure you look at head over to luckystraps.com if you're interested in a handcrafted premium leather camera strap that's proudly Australian made. It even has a little proud Australian made logo.
You can actually get a
I just
discount.
emailed you.
You can get a discount with one of 3 codes. You can save 15% off our camera straps or leather belts, which are all made here in Bendigo, in Victoria.
Yeah.
You can use the code Justin. You can use the code Greg, or you can use the code
Number
Jim.
one.
Now, just because Jim is only 3 letters, don't use it because you are voting with your discount code
What do you
on
think
who
it's-
is the best host. The
But-
host with the most, some might say.
But remember that Jim is the one who packs them. So if you want them extra specially packed, vote for Jim.
Wow. That's very low.
Oh, that
That's
is
a
low.
low blow.
That's
Well,
a low blow.
That's
I'm
using your privilege.
Anyway,
Oh, someone deleted.
anyway, so the codes are either Justin or Greg. Oh, he's back. Sorry, Jim. I don't know what happened there.
Oh,
You just
wow.
dropped off. You dropped off the stream for a second. That was
What's
weird.
the power that
Anyway.
Jim's like, I pack the straps, and Justin's like, yeah, but I run the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. See ya.
Yeah.
I emailed you a
played.
link to that car, Justin.
Did you? Okay, I'll try and bring it up because it's super relevant to everyone that's still watching. If you're out there in the comments, hang on, it's got
David,
like a whole.
David
this is
said,
a whole wedding.
how about closing
go to
out with some
64.
Olivia Newton-John? We would love to play Physical by
We'd
Olivia
get
Newton-John,
copyrighted.
but we would get copyrighted, unfortunately. You can listen to that in your own time, David.
And Justin doesn't have enough time to search for it.
Yeah, no, it's got to be
No.
a non-copyrighted
Yeah.
song, and that's why I spend so much time going through to find the awesome music.
Yeah, days.
This
Takes some
car.
days.
Takes me days.
Oh, what is that? What sort of car is it, Jim?
Cadillac.
The Caddy.
Mm,
It's a boat, isn't it?
It is a boat.
Yeah.
I bet it
I'm going to
floats
drive it,
around
Justin,
corners.
too.
Yeah,
You
you'll
what?
be driving it.
Yeah, I've got to
So-
try.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
So
awesome.
what I thought, Jim, we could do is, maybe I'll even get a few shots of you potentially driving it and I don't know, leaning on it with a camera strap or something.
Yeah, cool.
So wear your best flanny or something.
All right.
Or an appropriate outfit to go
So
with that
many
car.
to choose from.
Maybe the black flanny,
Yeah, the black flag,
Yeah.
Jim.
you know,
Okay, that'll
classy.
do it. Are you going to do night
I
shot
got
as
a
well?
white flanny actually that would go nicely with it.
Yeah.
A
What
white?
was
Are you
that,
going to do
Greg?
a night shot or just day shot?
I think dusk. I reckon I want to shoot just as sun's setting because it's black car. Try and
Yeah.
they don't like being shot in the sun.
Maybe bring a polarizer. You still
Yeah,
own one of
if
those?
it still fits any of my lenses. Yeah, I think it fits.
It'd
the
be
28.
really cool if you had that parked in an alley with a single street light down on it.
Ooh, and Jim's leaning on it smoking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
vaping.
You're smoking, Jim.
Maybe.
I don't
Vaping.
vape or smoke.
Vaping's not
Not
as not as romantic as
It's
that
not.
whole
Will
cigarette,
that ever be a
little
thing
wisp
in
of smoke.
Yeah, in some cool movie?
Yeah, well,
Hang on, what lens? What's that in reference to? What lens?
The photo maybe.
Yeah, what do you mean, David? Which lens? What lens will we shoot with tonight? What lens was
Or
this
this.
taken with?
yeah.
What's
Or
my
what
favorite
lens
lens?
is making Jim look smoking right now?
That's right.
You
Could be
know,
anything.
the opportunities and the options are endless, David. For this shot, okay. What lens did you
What
shoot the
lens
car with?
was that shot, Jim? Do you remember?
I don't
28.
know. I think it's a 28. Yeah,
Looks like a 28 to me.
yeah. I think it was a
Oh.
28 1.4.
Yeah. Otherwise, unless you happen to throw on, you still got your wide, your 16 to
Yeah, I
35?
don't use it, and
Yeah,
I don't
use
think
it,
I
yeah.
would have used. I don't think I was using it then. I reckon I was on my
28.
28, 58, 105 by then.
Nice.
Well and truly.
Well, look, I think on that note, we're going to wrap it up, lads.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening along. Don't forget to subscribe to the Camera Life on YouTube or on your podcast channel if you're listening audio only. And keep an eye out for Editor Seb's snippets and clips. He's been working very hard, listening to us drone on for hours to find the glory.
What a job.
Amongst the trash.
What a job.
Yeah, I don't envy him.
I appreciate you, Seb.
But he loves doing it, which is great. And he's very excited to be part of the Lucky Straps team, which is even better. But on that note, from all of us here at the Camera Life, be safe, get out, take some photos. And it doesn't matter what camera, what lens, shoot with your smartphone if you need to. But just get out and hunt the light for a little while and enjoy the fresh air and touching grass every now and then. I highly recommend it.
Cool. Thanks.
But thank you, Jim. Thank you, Justin. And thanks, Alex.
Find some music to bring us out on.
Your time. After all that time, you still don't know which button to press.
Catch you guys on Monday night. Let's try this one. I think this was so the intro song today. It was halfway through. I don't know what happened. I'm still figuring this out, but it was supposed to be this.
Hey. Always a bit of
wicka-wah. Anyway, catch you guys.
be good, folks.
Cool.
See ya.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
Monday.
See you later.